Hello and welcome to the Blue Tweezers channel, myself Alan from the channel, and we're doing a little bit of a golden oldie here, well certainly as far as I'm concerned. We'll be doing a playthrough of a scenario from the Victory Games Flashpoint Golan, a design that was published in 1991, the designer being Mark Herman. This copy and this game I actually bought at the time it came out, and it used to be my favourite game, though I haven't really touched it for years. So what is this game? It's set in the early 1980s Middle East. It's an operational level game, and it has battalions, task forces and brigades as its size. Of course, it's a hexagon map, and the map covers northern Israel and the areas around it in other countries. So this includes Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, but it also has other forces here, for example the United States, the Soviet Union, Iraq, the PLO and also the South Lebanon Army. It has set scenarios, one of which we will be playing, plus the main part of the game is a scenario generator to create a situation. There are 10 situations you can die roll for, and then you do further rolling on tables to work out what each of the postures of the various countries and factions are, who's involved, who's not, whether the scenario starts at peace and escalates to war or whether it's actually at war at the time. And that really is the sort of major part of the game. It's a two-mapper, and as you can see, it's got some tables on the sea area of the northern map. So the game system is a chit pool, and a chit represents a multi-unit manoeuvre unit, usually a division or maybe a brigade, and these are collectively known as formations. Plus chits also represent higher command headquarters. Victory is generally set by what's known as morale levels, which normally in other games would be considered something like step losses, plus any geographic locations depending on the scenario or the situation that's being played. The combination of those will get you levels of victory on either side. So let's look a little bit further into Flashpoint Golan. Let's look first at the counters. So these are the main counters in the game for each side, the units. We have here headquarters, which have the sort of white notation with the HQ. Then we have infantry and armoured formations, and then we have artillery. Just looking at the units for the moment, you can see that they have a designation for the formation they're in. This is the 7th Syrian Mechanized. This is the Moshe Armoured Division. We have a unit type, armoured here, and armoured infantry there. A sub-designation here, and then a single number. So that is the combat strength of the unit. If we flip them over, we'll see that it's pretty much the same with roughly half strength. This is what you would normally consider a step loss, but in this game is known as a morale level. So there are 4 morale level states. There is your normal level. The second level, after taking a hit or a morale failure, is the disorganized level. Then there are 2 more levels. There is the broken level, which you stick on top of the unit. This halves the strength again, and also the zone of control disappears. And finally, the 4th morale level is Carder, which means the unit has a strength of 1. So that's your 4 morale states for a unit. Beyond Carder, if another hit is taken, then the unit is eliminated. The artillery units here, there are again, Israeli here. These are rocket launchers. There are standard artillery units as well in the game. These have two numbers. The first is the combat strength, and the second is the range in hexes. Now, there are no movement points on the counters. Movement is done as a series of action points when the formation is activated, and each unit will get 6 action points. Movement uses action points, but also battles may use it as well. And as everything has 6 movement points, then there's no point in putting it into the counter. So turning to the headquarters here, we have 2 levels here. We have the formation headquarters. Here is the Moshe's Armour Division, so that's a subunit of this. And they have 3 values. So they have a combat strength, and it's in a bracket, so it's only for defense. It then has a command range, which is the small 6 here, and that is the radius by which that HQ can put units into command and also provide what's known as capabilities. The number in the top right there, also a 6, is the amount of capability points that HQ has per turn. The HQ itself actually represents a lot of rear area assets. If you're familiar with Battalion Combat series, it's very similar in that instance, is that it's a counter that represents the focus of the division as opposed to an actual place where everything is. Now these capabilities, and as you see up here, we have a higher HQ. This is the Northern Command for the Israelis. And as you can see, it's got a much bigger radius and a higher capabilities. However, each of these HQs have a list of the capabilities that are available. Here, for example, is the Israeli and US headquarters capabilities chart. So each column we have is the type of HQ it is. So Northern and Central Command for the Israeli HQs is this column, Division HQs this column, and Parachute Brigade HQs this column. We have the US HQs here as well. Each of these rows are the possibility of a different capability. So you can see we have aerial resupply. This is to allow out-of-supply units to be resupplied by the HQ. Air defense artillery, anti-tactical ballistic missiles, ammo replenishment, battle recovery, combat engineers. As you can see, there's a few missing. There's no cruise missiles here. HQ detection and jamming, short-range ballistic missiles, tank transporters, and transport helicopters. At the bottom there, it says it actually gives you the HQ capability point allowance. Now, the HQs can suffer exactly the same morale level changes as the units can. So, for example, the Northern HQ starts with a 9, we flip it over, it becomes a 6, and then if we had a broken or Carder morale, the capabilities drop. If there's a yes, it has that capability, and if it's got an R number, that's the range that capability can be supplied to. And if it's a blank, of course, then it doesn't have that. So you can see that the Israeli divisional HQs have much less capability than the Central Command or Northern Command HQs do. The Arab nations and the USSR also have their own chart for this, which has the same possible capabilities, but of course a big variation on whether they have those capabilities per HQ or not. Just running through them quickly, aerial resupply I explained, air defense artillery, so if there's any air related activities happening within the range, there is an ability for that to be stopped by air defense artillery, SAMs, that kind of idea. The anti-tactical ballistic missiles, so if ballistic missiles are being used within range, then those can be attempted to be knocked down. Ammo replenishment for artillery. So artillery, when they fire, they have a chance of running out of ammunition, and a capability point is needed to be used to replenish per unit. Battle recovery is the capability of a winner of a battle to use a capability point to restore one morale level that was lost in the battle on that side. Combat engineers allow field fortifications, minefields, bridges, etc. to be created or destroyed. HQ detection, I'll come back to because detection is a big part of the game. Jamming, again, will actually work with that in that same conversation. Short-range ballistic missiles, of course, this is being able to fire off these big missiles that fly off and attempt to hit targets indirectly. Tanks transporters, that capability is if you use what's known as strategic movement rate, you will actually lose a morale level unless you use an HQ capability of tank transporters to move that unit. And finally, transport helicopters, that's the ability to pick up a unit and move it via helicopter to another hex, within both of them being within range of the HQ. Finally, there is another quality that units possess, and that's known as troop quality. So this is a log sheet that is used per game. We're not really that fussed about everything down here because that's mainly to do with the scenario generation, with the exception of what's known as special munitions and HQ capability replacement points. But what we're interested in here is this track up here, where the player will list all the headquarters they have in the scenario or game currently. They will be given a training level, which is one of 4: elite, regular, reserve, or militia. That's usually entered at the start of the game, and for the first time that the unit has to do a morale check, which is against a D10, the troop quality will be determined. And again, we'll roll on a table depending on the training level, elite being likely to have a higher number than militia being a lower number. The training level never changes. However, the troop quality rating may, depending on damage or the status of the HQ, can vary, but will never be above a certain number, which is set by the training level. There will be some formations which have a fixed troop quality, which doesn't change, and there is no training level. Having a look at the map now. So, hexagon map, of course. There are 2. There's the north and the south map. This is the north map. The south map fits to the bottom of this. The north map covers, as you can see, the northern part of Israel, the Golan Heights, southern and central Lebanon, and western Syria. The south map gives you central Israel down to just below Jerusalem, continuing western Syria, and also western Jordan and the Jordan Valley. The size of the hexes are 4 kilometers. The shading on the map denotes kind of height, but each actually has a particular name for them. These areas here are either clear or desert. We also have rough, which is this dotted designation here. We have this slightly darker colour, which is hill. The brown colour, which is mountain. And then we have the dark brown, which is easily known as impassable. There are 2 levels of urbanisation, so the little irregular black blobs are towns, and the larger greenish blobs, which may be more than 1 hex, are of course city. There is also another height formation here. You see these sort of spiky circles here. These are known as tells, and they are effectively individual high ground areas. You also have roads, and they are of 2 kinds. a standard road, which is the thin grey lines, and then a highway, which is the thicker grey lines. There are other points of interest here, airfields here. The single round ones are standard airports. The random block size are known as major airports, and also there are, on occasion, an airport which is part of a road, and that's known as a highway airport. On top of the tells, there are also these rather stark black versions of tells. They're not tells themselves, they are fortifications, and field fortifications can be built, but these are permanently put on the map. There are two types of river. There is a stream, and of course the thicker, darker blue is known as a minor river. There are also these hexside dark patches, which are known as wadis, dry river valleys. Hills can come with hexsides as well, not just as a hex. There are also escarpments, which are these, if you like, the line of the same, the tell kind of symbology here. There are mountain hexsides as well, and finally these dark brown, very dark outlined. These are permanent anti-tank ditches. As you can see, there's one on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights, one on the Syrian side, and then there's two more belts. That gives you the terrain types. They do affect movement. They can also affect combat, of course, as well. Moving on to the sequence of play, we have two what is known as cycles. The first is the strategic cycle, then the second is the operations cycle. So strategic cycle, we find out who has initiative for the turn. This is done on a value called momentum. Momentum is gained by successful battles, and whoever has momentum on their side will get the initiative. There is some political events that can happen in this part of the turn, particularly with the pre-war turns. Then air superiority is determined, and then we go to jamming, in which HQs can be jammed on either side to disrupt them, and disrupted HQs can't actually use capabilities. Finally, there's some reinforcements. Again, this is usually in the situation games rather than scenarios. That's the strategic cycle. Then we're on to the operation cycle. So the player with the initiative takes one of the formation chits and keeps them. The rest go in a cup. And of course, there are activation segments at that point on, starting with the chit that got picked from the cup. So an activation segment consists of two parts. One is the movement phase, and then that is followed by the exploitation phase. At the start of each of these phases, you look on the map and to see if there are any units within ZOCs. So if there are some of that formation's units within ZOCs of enemy units, for each of those there has to be a decision made. One of three things can happen with those units. They may withdraw. That means they are forced to conduct movement 2 hexes away from the unit that was having the ZOC onto the initiative unit, and that's all they do. As an alternative, you could do what's known as hold. Hold means you do nothing for the activation, you just sit in the ZOC and do nothing. The last option is what's known as a set piece battle. So there are 3 types of combat in the game. The first is a set piece battle, which is a large assault effectively, encompassing bringing in airstrikes, artillery units, etc. After all those units that are in ZOCs have been resolved, either withdrawing, holding, or conducting a set-piece battle, all other units which are not in ZOCs can activate using 6 operations points. These 6 operations points can be used for movement, but they may also be used to conduct what's known as meeting engagements. When you enter a ZOC of an enemy unit, you must either spend an operations point to conduct a meeting engagement. The meeting engagement is like set-piece battle, but you aren't allowed as much support, or you just have to stop in that ZOC. As I said before, there's two phases. There's the movement phase and the exploitation phase. The exploitation phase is very similar to the movement phase and comes immediately afterwards. However, the decision about units in ZOCs, set piece, battle, hold, withdraw, is done, and then units that are within 5 hexes of a breakthrough marker and who are in supply may conduct an activation with 3 op points, so you can get to actually activate twice in a row. During these phases, movement and exploitation phase, all HQs, including the other side, not just the side that's activating or even the formation that's activating, can use one capability. Units can also be, in this turn, detected by the other side. Generally, if they conduct any actions like strikes, or if they move and they are within detection range. Detection range is determined by how far away you are from a spotting unit, and also the actual air superiority level. So air reconnaissance has a massive effect on that. HQs using capabilities can also be detected by opposing HQs and can be reacted against. I'd say the reactions for all of these can be airstrikes, SRBM strikes, artillery strikes, or helicopter strike. The strike is the third type of combat, which is a dice roll on the table to see if you hit a particular unit that's providing the reaction. During the set piece battles part of the phase, the activating formation can also use what's known as set piece strikes. So as long as they can see a unit, detect it, they can conduct strikes against those units, even though they haven't moved. So the first type of strike is a reactive strike for a movement or a capability or an activity within detection range. The second part, which is set piece strikes, are there essentially to aid set piece battles. Also in the strategic cycle, there is the replenishment and reorganization phase. In this, you determine the supply status of all the units that are on your side. To be in supply, you start at the HQs. The HQs must be within 4 hexes of a primary road that leads back into one of the cities of their country. Combat units are in supply if they are within command range of their own HQ or the higher command HQ. Once supply status is determined, you may place reorganize markers. Now, reorganize markers are essentially rallying. So a morale level on a unit, when you've done the whole turn, then that unit can be reorganized to a higher morale state. And finally, you can do artillery ammunition replenishment as a capability. Looking at strikes in particular, strikes can be conducted by air, SRBM, helicopter, or artillery. You use this strike table. The target must be detected, of course, and use the strike rating, which is a rating you'll obtain from the HQ for an SRBM strike, from an aircraft for an airstrike, and for artillery and helicopters, you look at the strength of the unit. You cross-index those with the dice roll you make, D10, zeros being zeros, and you will get a morale modifier, and you compare that to the troop quality of the target. There are some modifiers if the target is moving along a road, if they're entering a barrier minefield, if the target is in a town or a hasty fortification, or a city, a deliberate fortification. And if the troop quality fails, then you remove a morale level from that unit. Moving units will be forced to stop. So looking at battle resolution, of course we have the meeting engagement battle and the set piece battle. The only difference between the two is what support is allowed during those battles. For a meeting engagement, it's a moving stack which is attacking another target stack adjacent. For that, one defensive artillery unit can be used. If there are artillery units in the moving stack, they can contribute for the attack. Helicopter support can be provided. Initiative player can commit up to 2 and the reactive player 1. That's all you can have in a meeting engagement. In a set-piece battle, unlimited amounts of artillery can be used. Both sides may use up to 2 helicopters, and airstrikes are allowed unless the formation HQ has been disrupted. A special movement phase for the defender is allowed in set-piece battles. So before the battle is actually resolved, defensive unit or reactive unit that is in command at disorganized morale or better and within 2 hexes of the defending units can act as a reserve. The reserves may move 2 hexes along roads or 1 hex through any other terrain type into any hex adjacent to an attacking unit. So you don't necessarily have to go into the hex that's being attacked. Of course, detection and reaction is possible against this reserve move. Once it's determined the strength on each side, and in the set-piece battle any set-piece strikes and reactions have been completed, we look at the battle resolution table. Now this is one table that's stretched. If you can imagine, this table is actually on the end of this. We cross-index the defensive terrain with the odds, round down as usual, and then you roll a d10. Firstly, noting if a 1 or a 2 or a 7 or 8 are rolled, then artillery on either side may be out of ammo. If you're using a rocket launcher unit, that is automatically in a set-piece battle depleted. Having found the right column and the right row from the dice roll and the terrain plus odds, we look at 3 columns here, which is for a normal, disorganized and broken cadre level, and this gives us a number, the attacker and the defender number, and you compare that to the troop quality to see if the unit actually reduces a morale level. At this time you analyze the troop quality on each side. If the troop quality on one side is 2 or 3 times the lowest troop quality on the other side, then multiple levels of morale can be lost. Whoever has a unit which was reduced to the lowest final morale state loses the battle. You figure out a number of momentum points gained from the winning side and record any changes to troop qualities because of the battle. If the loser of the battle happens to be the defender, the units must retreat 3 hexes unless occupying a city. They tend to take a morale check against their troop quality. If they pass, then they don't have to retreat. All the hexes from which defending units retreated are marked with breakthrough markers. A breakthrough marker prohibits detection and negates enemy ZOC. It also qualifies units to activate for an exploitation phase as well. So if an attacker wins a set-piece battle, they can also pursue. That number depends on their mobility. Are they leg, motorised, mechanised, and also what morale state they are in. So that allows the advance after combat, if you like, but that can go maybe 1, 2 or 3 hex. That's the battle resolution, how that works. Now we'll move on to actually doing the formal playthrough, and that's the end of the intro. Please do leave any other questions in the comments below and I'll attempt to ask them, and a few things may become a bit more obvious during play. I haven't gone into absolutely all detail, but enough for you to understand how the playthrough is going. So we'll see you in the next video for the playthrough of Flashpoint Golan by Victory Games and Mark Herman. Bye for now.